Jeshua, being at home on earth. Dear friends, I am Jeshua. I am your brother and kindred spirit who holds your hand. In this time of change and profound transformation, I want to be with you. I am with you, because within the heart there are no boundaries, and time and space are not an obstacle. The heart is a place of miracles and timelessness. You all have been in and out of time. When you are born, when you step into your body here on earth, you take part in time and space as they were created here in the past. You become conditioned and formed by the environmental influences which exist here, although part of you is always outside the limitations of time and space. It is through that timeless part that you get the most direct access to your heart. Your heart is as a bridge between the dimension of the timeless and that of the time-bound, the physical. Your soul wants to enter this earthly reality across the bridge of your heart. Your soul stands on the very edge of two different dimensions. You will continuously receive messages, nudges, and signals from the dimension of your soul. Your soul knocks at your door, but, because you have taken in misinformation during the upbringing of your youth, you do not always know how to understand the language of your soul. After all, you were raised and have grown up in an environment with an energy that was influenced by fear, impotence, and struggle. Also, you still carry old burdens from previous lives in your soul's memory. You have come here in this life to transform many of those burdens of past lives as well as societal influences from your present life, so you can consciously experience connection with your soul that enables you to move beyond the restrictive earthly influences here in this life. You are here to bring in something new, which is part of your intention as a soul. You could say that doing that is your soul's assignment, or your soul's plan. In any case, this intention is not something that comes from outside you, it is something that you desire to create change from within yourself. It is primarily to heal yourself, to become free from fear, and the energies which still entrap you, and also, in a broader sense, to participate in the birth of a new consciousness. It is because you have this desire that you sometimes feel a stranger in this world. You do not feel at home here because your desire for authenticity cannot adapt to the existing forms of hierarchy and their oppression of individuality. That existing energy is at odds with the calling of your soul, that which you have been called to be and do, which is to experience freedom and renewal within yourself and to bring that forth and to sow it as seeds in the world around you. This means that as a child, and in the course of your youth, you have experienced loneliness and misunderstanding and confusion about yourself, and also resistance from the world around you. A child is vulnerable, searches for security, recognition, and approval. It wants to experience love, so that it can develop freely and be itself. But the love it needs is of a very high quality, and it is only love of that quality that can make the soul flourish. Your real desire is not about gaining the approval of others, because that you get by adjusting, and deep down you know this is not your way. You already knew this as a child, which is why you all experienced some alienation and confusion when you grew up, and so you felt different. This has happened, but it is important to realize that part of you has remained faithful to your true self, to your originality. This is the part of you that felt different, lonely, and confused, and it is the result of that remembrance and connection with your soul. At the same time, there was the vulnerable child in you, who wanted to adapt and experience belonging. The part that turned and twisted itself into all sorts of shapes to feel that belonging. That child part of you, which has been damaged, still feels this influence, and is still acting out a role, and doing this makes you underestimate yourself, and makes you feel small. It is very important that you realize doing this, because this is probably the biggest obstacle for connecting with your soul, and with the depth and greatness of who you truly are. Many of you have questions about your path in life, what to do, what to choose, which way to go. And the answers lie in surrender, connecting to your own source of inner knowledge and wisdom, and that is all within you. What often blocks you from being able to connect with your soul, and causes you to diminish yourself, are your thoughts and beliefs in your own smallness, and also the suppressing of your feelings and intuition. I ask you to travel with me here and now in this moment and connect with the larger me, the greater self that you are, and that has always been with you every day of your life on earth. However, you have partially forgotten that self, or you have had to push it away in order to survive emotionally. Feel the presence of this greater self, of your soul. Feel it around you in your energy field. Allow it into awareness, and let it penetrate into your body cells. Greet yourself, and welcome yourself. Feel the vast scope of your path, your wealth of experiences, and the wisdom that is eons old, and which is within you. You are the bearer of that wisdom. Feel the earth beneath your feet, her living presence. Feel her beating heart, she is a conscious being. Feel how you have been in an earthly body many times, and have gained much experience here. Greet her, greet the earth. The earth knows you, and not as the conditioned creature you have become through all the societal influences. No, the earth knows your soul, your original self, and wants to support you on your path. She works with cosmic influences. There is room for you, a place on earth that suits you. Earth's energy is many times higher than the energy of the collective consciousness of humanity at the moment. In this collective consciousness, this mass consciousness, there is the energy of fear. The earth needs the benefits of those persons who vibrate on another level. This energy feeds the earth, so your presence makes a difference. As a human being, you are a bridge between different worlds. You are here to channel your soul's energy to earth, and also those energies from the greater, higher consciousness. You are at home here on earth, but you do not feel at home in the energy of mass consciousness, as far as it is still bound by fear, struggle, and the need for survival, and with its insufficient connection with the soul. However, the earth itself is familiar to you, you are connected to her. Feel how the earth supports and receives you. Looked at from Earth's perspective, you are a bringer of a new consciousness, remember this. And deep down you know that you have come here to bring something new, and in that respect you are a leader. The world's leaders and leadership have become corrupt because they are associated with power, in the sense of exercising power over others, with the abuse of power. This usual idea of leaders presupposes the idea of followers. However, this is not the kind of leadership to which I am referring. The leadership that is inherent in you is that of being an exemplar, as one who carries a new energy, which is something you bring forth in your life. As soon as you begin to do this, a natural response arises immediately. Other people feel attracted to your energy, to what you radiate. You will then naturally feel attracted to guiding people in some way, or helping to change consciousness in the world. So, this inner process of becoming yourself, of recognizing and rediscovering your original self, goes along with expressing that self in the world around you. To be able to do this with confidence and decisiveness, it is necessary that you first understand what your role is, namely that you are a forerunner, a pioneer, that you come to bring in something new, that you are an iconoclast, and will not walk along the beaten track. To find your place on earth and to actively set down your energy, you need to create your own space, and that will not be an existing space. You design and make something new that suits you, that is consistent with your natural predisposition, with your lifestyle, with your unique energy. So, when it comes to finding your soul's path, realize that this soul path is new, and will not follow any established paths. It requires courage and audacity to create this path, of relying on your deepest inner feelings. I invite you to do 2 short exercises now so your path can become clearer for you. The first is that you connect with that part in you, the child part, if you will, who still feels small and insignificant, and who searches for outer recognition or confirmation. The child part who would like to do well in the eyes of others, and is afraid of rejection, afraid to be different and excluded. See if you can form an image of that child part, or feel it somewhere in your body. Sense a place in your body where the energy of that damaged child is present. Connect with this place that blocks you, and send love to it. Maybe you can see or feel it in the area of your belly, below your navel. There may be very deep feelings located there, a child's primal fears, the lack of security and safety. It is very important that you do not underestimate this part of yourself that will always demand your complete attention and love. You sometimes work too diligently, or are too impatient. On your path in life, the pain you feel through the broken child in you requires attention and love. Within you is a hurt child who has tried many times to put down light here on earth. That child was internally damaged, traumatized by rejection, misunderstanding, and loneliness, and the fact that you experience this has a reason. Because of this experience, you understand in a very deep way what being human means. From that wound in you, the deepest compassion and love are also born. So, it all has not been for nothing. Consciously keep in touch with this part of yourself and do not expect it to recover at once, and it does not have to. Take this child by the hand and take care of yourself. Look at what this part of you needs help to heal the old scars, the old pain. This is as much a part of your soul's goal as is putting your light and consciousness into the world. This life is also an unveiling of inner integration and unification of yourself, and this is very important. The second exercise is about connecting with your soul power, with your greatness. The power of your soul is very old, and from it you know, and feel much so feel, that in your heart. Feel the silence and the grandeur in your heart. Feel that you are here to be a guide to others, a guide who opens up opportunities which lead to something new. Feel this very positively, as something that is actually already here. Now look very objectively and openly at what you have to give to people. What energy is flowing into the world from your heart? What flows naturally without effort? Look at what the effect of your being, your presence, is on others. What does your energy do to another person? Try to give words to that. Try to describe, in one sentence, how you help others. It is something that touches others and wakes them up. From that deep place you give yourself to others. Who you are, what you emanate, you share that with others. Feel this very clearly, do not underestimate yourself in what you have to share, see its value and richness. When you realize this fully, you are then taking yourself seriously. You then have a better sense of what choices suit you, and where you might give too much of yourself and receive too little in return. By knowing yourself and taking yourself seriously, by valuing yourself, you are going to feel better. That is important, because, in a way, you have to be economical with your own energy. You have to pay attention to it, and to direct it well, because that energy is precious. Remember that you also carry a hurt inner child within you, who needs care and nurturing. The small and vulnerable within you needs as much attention as does the great and powerful within you. Take yourself seriously, as a forerunner, as a pioneer of consciousness. I salute you all out of this bond between us. It gives me great joy to be with you. Thank you so much. Pamela Kribbe. Hakann, Spiritual Ego. My dearest brothers and sisters, this is Hakann speaking. I greet you in peace and love. As I shared last week, Earth humans are an exceptional group, and as Earth humans who have at least partially woken up, you are an exceptional group within that exceptional group. You are not perfect, but you are amazing. And you are good enough, and you are fully worthy of love, as you are right now. Now, one issue that many partially awakened people struggle with is having a slight spiritual ego. Most spiritual people don't have an extreme spiritual ego, but most spiritual people do have a slight spiritual ego. Spiritual ego is when a person has an unrealistically high opinion of themselves due to their spirituality. It is not spiritual ego to have a realistic opinion of yourself and to acknowledge your skills and qualities and abilities and knowledge. You don't need to brag about your skills to others, but you should quietly acknowledge them to yourself. For example, it is not spiritual ego to think that you are more spiritually advanced than the average person on earth is, because indeed you are if you are tuning into messages like these. A person who makes a show out of being very humble may in fact have a form of spiritual ego, because it's entirely possible that they secretly have an unrealistically high opinion of themselves, and that's why they make a show out of being very humble. Alternatively, if a person genuinely has an unrealistically low opinion of themselves, then that's not spiritual ego, but it is another kind of distortion. The world needs your light. It is not a virtue to keep your light dimmed, or to refuse to acknowledge that it is there. So it is healthy to have a realistic opinion of yourself. That means acknowledging that you are better at spirituality, and at certain things, than most people, while also acknowledging that some non-spiritual people may have qualities and skills that you do not have. And it means that you acknowledge that while you are better at spirituality than the average person, that doesn't mean that you are a better person than them, or that you are more valuable than other people. All roads lead back to source, after all, and you are not better than another person who is choosing to take a longer route back to source. Having a realistic opinion about yourself also means that you don't automatically assume that everyone else around you is less spiritually advanced than you are. A person with spiritual ego often assumes that everyone who has another perspective is spiritually inferior to them, and needs to receive education or healing. Or they need to do inner work. Often a person with spiritual ego will express this in a superficially loving, but actually quite condescending way. If you present a substantive argument to a person with spiritual ego on why you think they're wrong about something, they probably will not answer with a substantive counter-argument, or with an agree to disagree statement. Instead they might express that they used to think like that, but now they are more evolved. Or they might say that they are a reflector, or a mirror, and that it's their nature to bring up unresolved stuff in other people. Or they might say that you should work through your triggers, even if you're not actually triggered. Or they might say that they hope that you will find healing, or find a proper path. Or they might tell you that you need to read some book in order to educate yourself. Or they might say it's okay if you can't understand this. Or they might say that only people who vibrate at a high enough frequency will see the truth in their statement. Or they might say I don't do this, it only seems that way to you, when in fact they clearly are doing the thing that is being pointed out. Or they might claim that all their words are always rightly guided, or are always channeled, or are always for the highest benefit of everyone involved. However, they won't believe that the words of other people are divinely guided or channeled, or are for people's highest benefit. Or they might say that because something resonates with them, or because their guides or intuition say something, everyone else should consider that thing to be objectively proven. Meanwhile, if someone else says that it doesn't resonate with them, or that their guides or intuition disagree, then that isn't considered valid proof of anything. So these are all ways in which someone with spiritual ego expresses that they are better than the other person, without ever making an actual substantive argument for why they are right in this case, or why they are more spiritually advanced. And they're doing it in a sneaky enough way that they don't appear unspiritual to a casual onlooker. To be clear, expressing public disagreement with someone else, using substantive arguments, is fine. You don't have to do that, but you can, and it doesn't indicate the presence of a spiritual ego. People can learn from substantive debates, including onlookers who aren't directly participating in the debate. This is how good ideas are spread, and bad ideas are discredited. If no one ever publicly disagrees with anyone else, bad ideas can spread far too widely. So as we've seen, if you disagree with a person with spiritual ego, they will typically respond in a subtly condescending, non-substantive way. A person without a spiritual ego can respond in a variety of ways, or even not respond at all, but they won't respond in a subtly condescending way. A person who says that they are learning from literally everyone they come across may be in spiritual ego, because that's almost certainly not actually true, and hence they're expressing an unrealistically high opinion of themselves. A spiritually healthy person will learn from certain people, and not learn from others. Some people will have valuable lessons to teach you, and others will not. Now, an issue here is that people with a spiritual ego may falsely believe that they in fact do have a realistic opinion of themselves, and it's simply the objective truth that they are more spiritually advanced than pretty much everyone else. Most likely you cannot cure someone else of their spiritual ego. If you yourself think that you are more spiritually advanced than pretty much everyone else, well, do you regularly feel a profound sense of peace? Do other people love being around you because your presence just feels wonderful to them? Are lots of other people regularly complimenting you on your words and telling you that they are benefiting from what you are saying and writing? Only if you answered yes to all three questions, then you may indeed be near the spiritual top of earth. But even that's not ultimate attainment. One fully enlightened and fully source-aligned Earth human could and probably would free the planet single-handedly. Next up, let us look at certain flavors of spiritual ego. People may have one, several, or none of the following flavors of spiritual ego. Dunning-Kruger spiritual ego. This is a person who is relatively new to spirituality. A short while ago they had their first insight, or their first really good meditation experience, or they recently discovered a spiritual principle that they really resonate with. Because of this, the person with Dunning-Kruger spiritual ego will think they are much more advanced than they actually are, because they do not yet have enough knowledge or wisdom to understand just how much they don't yet know about spirituality. Here is the Dunning-Kruger graph, n.wikipedia.org web link. A person suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect is on the small hill to the left, characterized by a lack of confidence due to newness, and an incredibly high confidence. People with Dunning-Kruger spiritual ego may talk as if their insight is the one true insight that everyone else needs to learn, and every other perspective is inferior. When in reality, their insight is probably just one valuable perspective out of many. And more experienced spiritual people will likely have learned that principle long ago, and now it's just one valuable perspective out of many to them. A person with Dunning-Kruger spiritual ego might act like any sort of real-world or practical perspective is a 3D perspective, and therefore bad, while their very high and not practically applicable perspective is the one sole truth of the universe. A person with Dunning-Kruger spiritual ego might have recently started following some kind of guidance or intuition, and may falsely believe they are the only person to do so, and may therefore believe there's some kind of spiritual master who everyone should listen to. When in reality, lots of people receive guidance or have intuition. Moreover, even if a person sometimes receives genuine guidance, then typically that doesn't mean that every single action they take and every single word they say is coming from that guidance. More likely they only receive and then follow that guidance occasionally, and probably the rest of the time they are just being driven by their emotions and their subconscious, which might be quite fallible. Also, people are guided based on where they currently are. So if the person is being guided to meditate for 10 minutes per day, that doesn't prove that 10 minutes of meditation per day is the one and only true spiritual practice that everyone should follow. Obviously this is a silly example, but people with Dunning-Kruger spiritual ego really might falsely believe that a path that is good for them is the one true path that everyone should follow. If this person then follows their guidance and indeed meditates for 10 minutes, this doesn't prove that they are a spiritual master who is living non-stop in alignment with their guidance. It just means that they got personalized advice based on where they were at the time, and they followed that advice. That's all. Obviously treat everyone with love, and definitely also treat someone like this with love, because likely they're not malicious. Likely they're just new to the spiritual field. And it's entirely possible that they will grow out of this as they become more experienced. Love me spiritual ego. This is a person who wants love and compliments and validation from other people. Therefore, they may engage in performative spirituality. They might adopt a spiritual persona and put on a theatrical act to show others how spiritually advanced they are. This person is probably spiritual in an unoriginal way, because after all they're putting on a subconscious act of what they think a spiritually advanced person looks like. So they'll repeat whatever the current spiritual trends are. They'll say things that make them look spiritually advanced to the average spiritual person. But they probably won't say anything that is insightful and original. Whereas a spiritual master is probably original in some way, they may have some new teaching. They may have a subtle disagreement with a respected existing teaching, they may present themselves in an unconventional way, they may have an unconventional focus, etc. A spiritual master may say, or do, or advocate for things that don't immediately appear as the highest and most spiritually advanced thing to the average person. The master doesn't care, because he isn't interested in impressing the crowd, unlike the person with love-me spiritual ego. A love-me spiritual ego person may seem to have an entire personality that only revolves around being spiritually advanced. Meanwhile, an actually spiritually advanced person is more complex, and is a more multifaceted person. A person with love-me spiritual ego likely dresses in a way that makes them look spiritual. A person without spiritual ego won't necessarily dress in a stereotypically spiritual way, although they might still dress like that if they happen to like that kind of clothing. A person with love-me spiritual ego may say things that make others look less spiritually advanced than themselves. This way, the love-me spiritual ego person gets a larger share of the group's appreciation and respect. So for example, they might say in a sneaky and roundabout way that because someone else reacted emotionally to something, that proves they aren't very spiritually advanced. Meanwhile, a spiritually advanced person won't personally attack others, but they may attack what they consider to be wrong or unhelpful ideas, using substantive arguments. After all, doing that is actually a service to others, or a service to the public, if it's done by someone who knows what they are talking about. People with love-me spiritual ego may believe in spiritual principles that are clearly illogical, or are clearly stated in an exaggerated form, just because those principles sound emotionally pleasant and empowering. People with love-me spiritual ego may be excessively focused on love and light, and on things that feel good. They may be in resistance to reasonable disagreements, or unpleasant truths. If you tell a person with love-me spiritual ego that you think they are wrong about something, or that they have some unresolved issue, or that they're not being reasonable or genuine, then that person might internally freak out. They may become angry or hostile, or condescending. Or perhaps break off contact with you permanently while putting on a show, and responding in a seemingly spiritually advanced way. So let's say a person with love-me spiritual ego is putting on a performative spirituality show. And if you point out that they're not being genuine, and are perhaps being condescending in some way, it's entirely possible that they won't self-reflect, or have a conversation about it with you, or just say they disagree. Instead, they might inform you that they simply no longer resonate with you, but that you are a great person, and they wish you all the best in the world. And then they might never speak to you again. To be clear, it's not inherently wrong to say that you no longer resonate with something or someone. However, the vast majority of spiritual people are merely at the point where what resonates with them is usually good and truthful, and what doesn't resonate with them is merely usually bad or false. Few spiritual people are at the point where what resonates is always good and truthful, and what doesn't resonate is always bad or false. So there are spiritual people who avoid looking within by simply saying that they don't resonate with the person making the argument, and then ignoring the actual argument being made. The words "I don't resonate" can certainly be used properly, but sometimes the person saying those words isn't actually being driven by intuition or guidance. Sometimes they're simply being driven by emotion, and are saying it doesn't resonate to avoid self-reflection or self-observation. What emotionally feels good isn't always true or beneficial. What emotionally feels bad isn't always false or bad. And focusing on things that emotionally feel good, and avoiding things that emotionally feel bad, isn't always the best thing to do, even if it's dressed up in spiritual language such as keeping your vibration high, this resonates, and that doesn't, etc. Most people, including most spiritual people, are more often being driven by emotion than they are aware of. and emotions are often self-protecting or self-serving in some way, rather than being concerned with what's actually true. If someone who isn't a spiritual master says this doesn't resonate, or this doesn't feel good, then other people understand that it's not objective truth, that that thing or idea is universally bad. People understand that a sort of subjective statement is being made. Well, similarly, if you're not a spiritual master yourself, then what resonates with you and what feels good to you also is probably a mostly accurate indicator, but not an always accurate indicator. Maintain status spiritual ego. If a person has a certain spiritual status in the eyes of others, they may feel the need to engage in performative spirituality to maintain that status. For example, a spiritual teacher may feel the urge to constantly present themselves in a way that makes them look spiritually advanced to other people. They do this to maintain their status and their position, and perhaps their income. Or a person who has a relationship with a somewhat judgmental spiritual partner may feel the urge to present themselves in a spiritual way. Or someone who is a member of a spiritual community or spiritual group may feel an urge to keep up appearances. This can cause a person to make claims like "I don't have an ego," or "I don't judge," when clearly they still do. They might say "I am not invested in the outcome," when clearly they are. Or the person might claim to be objective and unbiased when they clearly aren't. Or a person might claim that every waking moment of theirs is a magical experience, or some other hyperbole like that. Or a person may claim that they are 100% grateful for something awful that happened to them, because they learned from it and it made them who they are. When in reality, probably some part of them is genuinely grateful for it, and some other part of them is still hurt about it or wished it hadn't happened. A person may be consciously or subconsciously trying to maintain their status in this way. They can consciously decide to only share happy and fun and positive things and not ever talk about painful or difficult things, or they might subconsciously reason, "Well, I wouldn't be a very good spiritual teacher if I had that flaw. Therefore I can't have that flaw because I am a good spiritual teacher." So basically, this spiritual teacher refuses to look at any part of themselves that isn't or doesn't look spiritually advanced. They feel that spiritual teachers can't have certain flaws, and so they refuse to acknowledge any hint of those flaws in themselves, even if they're there. That said, this is understandable to an extent, because spiritual teachers often rely on being a spiritual teacher for their income. This means that their income depends on putting on a show of performative spirituality, because most people do in fact get fooled by that. And many people do in fact stop listening to a spiritual teacher if that spiritual teacher admits to having certain flaws or struggles. Maintain self-image spiritual ego. This is a person who has only received conditional love. They only received love if they were good enough in some way. As a result, they only love themselves if they judge themselves to be good enough. So this person will love themselves if they are spiritually advanced, and they don't love themselves if they're not sufficiently spiritually advanced. As a result, this person has an unrealistically high opinion about themselves, because that's what they need to be able to love themselves. Obviously, this person, like everyone else, deserves love and compassion. On the other hand, it can be quite frustrating to deal with this person. For example, this person may clearly judge you, but then tell you that they don't judge, and that there's something wrong with you if you think they are judging you. They may declare that everyone is perfect just as they are, but then they clearly judge other people, and then deny that they are judging other people, even though they're clearly doing so. Why are they acting like this? Well, they've told themselves that spiritually advanced people don't judge, and they feel they can only love themselves if they are spiritually advanced. So they have to believe they're not judging others, even if they clearly are doing so, in order to maintain their self-image. This can lead them to having an out-of-control shadow, and them gaslighting the people around them. Another form of maintained self-image spiritual ego is someone who thinks that they don't have any inner parts, that are unevolved, are in pain, are conflicted, etc. They pretend that they have healed all their wounds and integrated all their inner parts. They may tell you that they used to have certain unresolved issues in some way, but that's always in the past, and today they're completely aligned. But then if you watch this person act, it usually becomes obvious that they do in fact have certain inner parts that are in pain, or aren't aligned. Maintain self-image. Spiritual ego people may be quite judgmental in a subtle and subconscious way, because if they don't accept certain things in themselves, they may also not accept these things in others. In fact, they might subconsciously try to help others in a perverse way. Don't be X, because if you're X then you're not good enough, and not worthy of love. Or you should be Y, because if you're Y then you're good enough and worthy of love. It's almost like they're trying to force their religious dogma onto you. A person with maintained self-image spiritual ego will nudge you to suppress so-called bad thoughts or emotions, for example, by telling you to raise your vibration, or by saying that if you focus on something bad then it grows, or negative things then manifest. They might say that your thoughts and feelings create your reality, therefore you should focus on thinking and feeling positive things. In this way they imply that you should suppress so-called bad thoughts or emotions. Meanwhile, a spiritually advanced person will nudge you to observe everything that arises in you, including so-called bad thoughts and emotions. Because that's actually the way in which you let go of these things over time. Whereas if you suppress so-called negative thoughts or emotions, they will still affect what manifests in your life from your subconscious. Your subconscious affects your reality and manifestations too, so suppressing things and focusing on positive thoughts and feelings doesn't actually help. If a person wants to help strangers in a way that violates their free will, that may be a maintained self-image spiritual ego person, because it is a kind of power trip and self-image boost for them. Maintained self-image spiritual people may have a savior complex. They may be excessively emotionally invested in making sure that everyone hears their words. They may have the tendency to give unsolicited advice excessively often. Usually that should only be done if you've listened extensively to that person first, and are very sure that you're coming from a good place, and have good advice. Substantively disagreeing with bad ideas is fine, pointing out that people are being condescending is fine, but unsolicited advice is usually, though not always, unhelpful. In an ideal world, the person with maintained self-image spiritual ego would receive enough unconditional love that they realize they are already worthy of love as they are right now, even if they have certain flaws. So, what should I do? So, what should you do? Well, observe what arises in you. Be honest and authentic. Have an accurate self-image where you view yourself as neither more accomplished nor less accomplished than you actually are. Have opinions, but at the same time realize that they might be wrong, or that a more enlightened person than yourself might look at things differently. Accept the possibility that on certain points others may be right, and you may be wrong. If you don't know a lot about a topic, listen. If you do know a lot about a topic, it's still important to listen, but then don't be afraid to speak and to publicly disagree with unhelpful ideas, using substantive arguments. Now, it's entirely understandable that many people have a spiritual ego, because most people haven't received all the love and nourishment and care that humans need. Really, the amount of love that a human needs to function optimally is much larger than you probably think, and probably you haven't nearly received that amount of love in your life. Your scientists say that it is healthy to have 5, or 10, or even 20 warm interactions with someone for every negative interaction you have with them. A warm interaction might be giving someone a compliment, or spending quality time with them, or giving them a hug, or joking with them in a friendly manner. Now, how many people give 5, or 10, or 20 compliments, or similar, for each time they criticize the other person, or point towards something they should work on? Not many. Hence, it makes sense that many people feel underloved and underappreciated. Now, criticizing someone, or pointing to something they should work on, is sometimes the absolutely correct thing to do. But it can also come from a place of ego, from a place of thinking you know better than the other person, from a place of wanting control, or from a place of thinking the other person is a fool who is lost without your help. Indeed, while some people may feel inclined to often criticize others or point out flaws in them, people very rarely want to be on the receiving end of that. People rarely want others to criticize them, or point out flaws in them, except for times when it's urgent or very necessary, or when the time is very ripe. And indeed, that isn't just vanity. People are actually correct in feeling that it's best for them if other people are usually loving and complimentary towards them and only occasionally criticize them, or point out flaws in them. This channeler regularly interacts with a Pleiadian outside of the context of channeling. She sees that the channeler is already growing and progressing and finding his own way, and that his own system is nudging him towards healing, and that his guides are nudging him towards truth and further growth at the appropriate base. And this is true for many people, it's not just true for this channeler. So nearly every interaction she has towards him is warm and affectionate and complimentary and loving and appreciative. Almost never, but not literally never, is she pointing out flaws or things he could work on. Even though there is certainly stuff she could point out. Her approach is actually more beneficial for his growth than if she would have been more critical, because being loved is a need that humans have, and this way he is getting that need met. And his own system and his own guides are already nudging him towards truth and healing and growth. He doesn't need another person to point out flaws, except in rare circumstances. Most people already know plenty of domains they could self-improve, and what they lack isn't knowledge of things they could work on. Instead, they lack the metaphorical resources to work on those things to a large extent. And by being loving towards someone, you give them more resources to develop themselves with. Sure, they might spend those resources slightly differently than you would, but that's their free will choice to make. If you value someone, trust them to find their path. But, yes, to tie this all together, most people are underloved. And so it makes sense that people behave in spiritually egoic ways to try and get more love and appreciation. Especially because people on Earth aren't getting the support or recognition or community that they deserve. At the same time, having a spiritual ego can hinder your spiritual growth and can stand in the way of making healthy connections. And it can also seriously annoy the people around you. Because it's not fun to be around someone who is being inauthentic and condescending and perhaps even gaslighting you. So, I would like to invite you to be aware of spiritual ego and keep observing what arises within. If you detect some spiritual ego within yourself, that is entirely understandable. In fact, many people have a spiritual ego to at least a slight extent. Just observe it, and it should weaken over time, and try to be fair in your words and actions. You're never bad for having certain thoughts or emotions, it is only needlessly hurtful words and actions that are bad. I hope this was helpful. I love you very much. Your star brother, Hakann. For Era of Light. Life Tapestry Creations, floating, not fighting. Dear Owns, your life probably does not feel exciting or fun, such as due to your recent inner changes that you could not necessarily feel, but happened nevertheless. Some will proclaim that this is so with thankful feelings of completing yet another phase. But most will believe that not only is this more transition garbage, but we other universes have been lying to you for years. Even though such is not true, that does not negate your unpleasant feelings, particularly during this normally festive time of the year. Most of you are so emotionally uncomfortable that you are willing to forego most holiday festivities, with a nervous eye to an unpleasant future personally, globally, and politically. It seems as if everything in your world is wrong. So you end this year with anger, regret, and, most likely, some antiquated conspiracy theories about how awful next year will be. You cannot see light or love, only fear. Yet your new world role in this transition is complete. You moved the new world dial from 0 to 10. Those following you are moving the dial to 15, and those following to 20. But with each movement of the dial, your inner world collapses, only for you to create a new one. The first 10 dial movements were at your pace and direction. The dial movements following yours are deeper and more rapid, not necessarily comfortable for you, but required for a rapid shift, and in tune with those following you. Those following you build upon your dial movements, requiring less time to reach certain points in their transition, so they can jump phases you worked at for weeks, months, or years. Will you feel this emotionally uncomfortable with each earth shift in this lifetime? No. The phase you are now enmeshed in is the last of the deep discomfort, for this phase provides you with an armor of protection that will negate the need for further deep discomfort. The worst for most forerunners will be finalized by the end of this week, and the end of this calendar year for all. This time of discomfort is about adjusting your inner being to the new world at Mach speed. Those following you most likely entered the earth in this lifetime after you and have a layer of protection against the fears you are now experiencing. Your fears are about confusion and distractions. Nothing seems to fit correctly, even the most simple exercise. But since not everyone feels the same, you are more isolated with your fears than you likely have been in a very long time, or ever. You feel isolated as you create your new path. If everything in your life were flowing, fun, and exciting, you would not need to do anything other than exist. You are clamoring for the new but have not quite adjusted internally. This phase is designed to rectify that shortcoming. Within days, you will feel joy with new thoughts and actions designed for you by you. What you continue to shed because of your eons of previous Earth lives and your current Earth longevity is pain and fear from this and previous lives. Those following have had fewer Earth lives, including a shorter time in this lifetime. Do not concern yourself with possible failure. Your current discomfort merely indicates growth into your new being. You have not yet claimed your unique path, which will happen within days. And when you do so, your inner and outer lives will be peaceful and joyful. You are a work in progress as you shed your inner and outer 3D worlds, and allow others to decide what role they wish to play in this new world. Those who continue to fully claim their 3D lives will become a minor distraction within days, as they fade in importance and drama, particularly drama that impacts you. You are becoming the new being you have hoped for eons. A shift that will happen within days instead of months or years. Not only is this dream within your reach, but we other universes are assisting you to more rapidly find your place in your new world. It serves no purpose to prolong your pain, for you are no longer of 3D, in which pain is the dominant sensation. It is time for you to fully claim yourself in joy. And so you will much sooner than you now expect or feel possible. Allow yourself to float instead of trying to push or pull away your 3D fears. Pushing or pulling will not shorten the time required to discard 3D pieces hidden in your corners, it merely expands their role in your daily life. Accepting, not fighting, is your new mantra, knowing that this pain is short-lived and no longer an important part of your life. Float through instead of fighting your fears and pain, and the next few days will fly by. Continue to fight, and the pain will become deeper and more harmful to your physical being. It is time to float forever. So be it. Amen. Source: rayofflight.com. The other videos are in the English video playlist. Help me spread the light. Click like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.